right? This is part 4, the final part. I have 20 minutes left on my phone. I'll stop babbling on as usual. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Stay tuned. Tomorrow or in a couple days from now, I'll be making that swimming with the sharks video, where I'll be talking about Amazon. I do not let Hollywood actors dupe you. And Amazon gets a flat 40% of all the profits. Skyscraper gets a flat 60% of all the profits. That is the deal. I'm going to tell the legal side to write this on the contract. Skyscraper gets a flat 40% of all the profits. Make sure you tell that, all the profits. Never say gross or nets. No. Say 40% of all the profits Amazon gets, and Skyscraper gets 60% of all the profits, and they do not take a percentage of any of the payments. That's part of the contract. That way they don't breach the deal. And if Amazon breaches the deal, I'll terminate the contract with them, and I'll just release movies online. They're missing out on all the billions. I'm going to be very strict. Don't like my offer, you're more than welcome to ban the deal, and you're missing out on all the billions. I'm gonna put all these people in a pickle, whereby they're left with no choice, obviously, but to accept my deal, obviously. Let me stop babbling on. I'll start reading the remainder of chapter 7, obviously. Right? He told them tales of bees and flowers, the ways of trees and the strange creatures of the forest, about the evil things and good things, things friendly and things unfriendly, cruel things and kind things, and secrets hidden under brambles. As they listened, they began. So Tom Bombadil is telling them stories about whatever, right? As they listened, they began to understand the lives of the forest. So Tom Bombadil is talking to them about the forest, obviously, and all that stuff, right? As they listened, they began to understand the lives of the forest, apart from themselves. Indeed, the films. I told you, Tom Bombadil, I believe, has some connections to the forest, obviously. As the strangers were all other things were at home. As the strangers were all other things were at home. Moving constantly in and out of his talk was Old Man Willow, and Foro learned now enough to content him. Indeed, more than enough, for there was not countable lore. Tom's words laid bare the hearts of trees and their thoughts, which were often dark and strange, and filled with hatred of things that go free upon the earth, gnawing, biting, breaking, hacking, burning. You know what I'm saying? Peter Jackson got this idea. Remember how Treebeard, he's like gnawing, breaking, hacking, and burning in Two Towers. Peter Jackson got this saying. He took these words and had Treebeard say those words in the movie, which I think is pretty cool, obviously. Right, gnawing, biting, breaking, hacking, burning, destroyers and usurpers. It was not called the Old Forest without reason. It was indeed ancient, a survivor of vast forgotten woods. So you're getting a little history about the Old Forest here, right? And in it there lived yet, aging no quicker than the hills, the fathers of trees, remembering times when they were lords. The countless years had filled them with pride and rooted wisdom, and with malice. But none were more dangerous than the great willow. His heart was rotten, but his strength was green, and he was cunning, and a master of winds, and his song and thought ran through the woods on both sides of the river. His grey, thirsty spirit drew power out of the earth, and spread like fine root threads in the ground, and invisible twig figures in the air, till it had under his dominion nearly all the trees of the forest, from the hedge to the downs. Suddenly Tom's talk left the woods and went leaping up the young stream, over bubbling waterfalls, over pebbles, and worn rocks, and among small flowers, in close grass, and wet crannies, wandering at last up on the onto the downs. They heard of the great barrows and the green mounds, and the stone rings upon the hills, and the hillows among the hills, and the hollows among the hills. Sheep were bleating in flocks, green walls and white walls rose. There were fortresses on the heights. Kings of little kingdoms fought together, and the young sun shone like fire on the red metal of their new greedy swords. There was victory, and with defeat, and towers fell. Fortresses were burned, and flames went up into the sky. Gold was piled on the biers of dead kings and queens, and mounds covered them, and the stone doors were shut, and the grass grew over tall. Sheep walked for a while biting the grass, but soon the hills were empty again. A shadow came out of dark places far away, and the bones were stirred in their mounds. Barrow wights walked in the hollow places with a clink of rings on cold fingers, and gold chains in the wind. Stone rings grinned out of the ground like broken teeth in the moonlight. The hobbits shuddered. Even in the Shire, the rumor of the barrow wights of the barrow downs beyond the forest had been heard, obviously. So the hobbits are now hearing rumors about the barrow downs, and they end up taking the path through the barrow downs after this chapter, obviously. And I believe Tom Bombadil rescues them. But it was not a tale that any hobbit liked to listen to, even by a comfortable fireside far away. These four now suddenly remembered what the joy of this house had driven from their minds. The house of Tom Bombadil nestled under the very shoulder of those dreaded hills. They lost the thread of his tale and shifted uneasily, looking aside at one another. When they caught his word again, they found that he had now wandered into strange regions beyond their memory and beyond their walking thought, into times when the world was wider and the seas flowed straight to the western shore. And still on and back Tom went singing out into the ancient starlight, when only the elf stars were awake. Then suddenly he stopped, and they saw that he nodded as if he was falling asleep. The hobbit sat still before him, enchanted, and it seemed as if under the spell of his words the wind had gone and the clouds had dried up, and the day had been withdrawn, and darkness had come from east and west, and all the sky was filled with the light of white stars. Whether the morning and evening of one day or many days had passed, for he could not tell, he did not feel either hungry or tired, only filled with wonder. The stars shone through the window, and the signs of the heavens. 4 pages left, I'm done here. Sign of the heavens seemed to be round him. He spoke at last out of his wonder, and a sudden fear of that silence. "Who are you, master?" he asked. "Eh, what?" said Tom, sitting up, and his eyes glinting in the gloom. "Don't you know my name yet? That's the only answer. Tell me, who are you? Alone yourself and nameless. But you are young and I am old. Eldest, that's what I am. Mark my words, my friends. Tom was here before the river and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. He made pass before the... Wait, who is Frodo talking to here? Give me a second. Talking to Tom? "Hey, what?" said Tom, sitting up, and his eyes glinting in the gloom. "Don't you know my name yet? That's the only answer. Tell me who you are, alone yourself and nameless. But you are young and I am old. Eldest, that's what I am. Mark my words, my friends. Tom was here before the river and the trees. Tom remembers the first raindrop and the first acorn. He made pass before the big people and saw the little people arriving. He was here before the kings and the graves and the barrow-wights when the elves passed westward. Tom was here already, before the seas were there bent. He knew the dark under the skies when it was fruitless. Before the dark glow came from outside, a shadow seemed to pass by the window, and the hobbits glanced hastily through the panes. When they turned again, Goldberry stood in the door behind, framed in light. She held a candle, shielding its flame from the draught with her hand, and the light flowed through it, like sunlight through a white shell. "The rain has ended," she said, "and new waters are running downhill under the stars. Let us now laugh and be glad. Let us have food and drink," cried Tom. "Long tales are thirsty, and long listening hungry work morning, noon, and evening." With that he jumped out of his chair, and with a bound took a candle from the chimney self and lit it in the flame that Goldberry held. Then he danced about the table. Suddenly he hopped through the door and disappeared. Quickly he returned, bearing a large and laden tray. Then Tom and Goldberry set the table, and the hobbits sat half in wonder and in half in laughter. So fair was the grace of Goldberry, and so merry and odd the caperings of Tom. Yet in some fashion they seemed to weave a single dance, neither hindering the other, in and out of the room and around about the table. With great speed food and vessels and lights were set in order. The boards blazed with candles, white and yellow. Tom bowed to his guests. "Supper is ready," said Goldberry, and now the hobbit saw that she was clothed all in silver with a white girdle, and her shoes were like fishes' mail. But Tom was all in clean blue, blue as rain, washed, forget-me-nots, and he had been shockings. It was a supper even better than before. The hobbits, under the spell of Tom's words, may have missed one meal or many, but when the food was before them, it seemed at least a week since they had eaten. They did not sing or even speak much for a while, and paid close attention to business, but after a time their hearts and spirits rose again, and their voices rang out in mirth and laughter. After they had eaten, Goldberry sang many songs for them, songs that began merrily in the hills and fell softly down into sounds. I told you they sing a bunch of songs, man. In the silences they saw in their mind pools, and water wider than any they had known. And looking into them, they saw the sky below them, and the stars like jewels in the depths. Then once more she wished them each good night, and left them by the fireside. But Tom now seemed wide awake, and plied them with questions. He appeared already to know much about them, and all their families, and indeed to know much of all the history and doing of the Shire, down from days hardly remembered among the hobbits themselves. It no longer surprised them, but he made no secret that he owed his recent knowledge largely to Farmer Maggot. So Farmer Maggot knows Tom Bombadil, right? Whom he seemed to regard as a person of more importance than they had imagined. There's earth under his old feet, and clay on his fingers, wisdom in his bones, and both his eyes are open, said Tom. It was also clear that Tom had dealings with the elves, and it seemed that in some fashion news had reached him from Gildor concerning the flight of Frodo. Indeed, so much did Tom know, and so cunning was his questioning, that Frodo found himself telling him more about Bilbo and his own hopes and fears that he had told before. 2 more pages and I'm done here. I'll be moving on to the fog on the Barrow Downs, obviously. So in a good like 4 or 5 minutes, I'll be done reading. I won't comment because there's not that much to comment for what I read. It's pretty much Frodo and them. You know what I'm saying? They go through the forest. They go into Tom Bombadil's house. Frodo is like under some spell or something like that when Tom speaks. Tom tells them the history about the stuff about the forest, how about who he is, all that stuff. And they have dinner at his house. That's pretty much what it's about. And Tom sings all these songs, right? So not that much to talk about for Tom Bombadil, obviously. And after that, so after I read this, I'll babble on for the remaining time. I'll talk about what the interesting stuff, which is Skyshift, obviously. As even though my Lord of the Rings read along is interesting, it's more interesting when I babble on, obviously. When I talk about the more interesting stuff like Skyshift, obviously, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm not an avid book nerd, right? Even to Gandalf, Tom wagged his head up and down, and there was a glint in his eyes when he heard of the riders. See, the riders are still on Frodo's tail, because they can sense the presence of the ring, obviously. Show me the precious ring, he said suddenly in the midst of the story. So Frodo told Tom Bombadil a bit about his journey, Bilbo, all that stuff, and then now Tom is telling Frodo, show me the ring. Obviously, right? And I believe Tom Bombadil is not affected by the ring. He's not drawn by its power, and he doesn't care about the ring or something like that. Show me the precious ring, he said, suddenly in the midst of the story. And Frodo, to his own astonishment, drew out the chain from his pocket, and fastening the ring, handed it once to Tom. It seemed to grow larger as it lay for a moment on his big brown-skinned hand. Then suddenly he put it to his eye and laughed. For a second the hobbits had a vision, both comical and alarming, of his bright blue gleaming through a circle of gold. Then Tom put the ring round the end of his little finger and held it up to the candlelight. For a moment the hobbits noticed nothing strange about this. Then they gasped. There was no sign of Tom disappearing. So Tom has some power over the ring, obviously, because he put the ring on and then he did not disappear, obviously. So Tom is not affected by the ring. He's not what? He has power over the ring, obviously, right? And in other words, most people when they get the ring, they're possessed by the ring. They want it so bad. Whereas Tom, he takes the ring, he puts it in his finger, he doesn't disappear, and he laughs because the ring does not affect Tom, obviously, right? Tom laughed again, and then he spun the ring in the air and vanished with a flash. Also, he did disappear. Sorry. So Tom put the ring on, and he didn't disappear. Then he put the ring on, and then he disappeared. My point is, he's not affected by the ring, obviously. Tom left again, and then he spun the ring in the air and vanished. I made a mistake there. My bad, guys. Tom left again, and then he spun the ring in the air, and it vanished with a flash. Oh, sorry, the ring vanished. He didn't vanish. Sorry. So Tom put the ring on. He didn't vanish, obviously, and he spun the ring in the air, and the ring vanished with a flash, obviously. So Tom is not affected by the ring, obviously. I made a mistake again. So Tom left again, and then spun the ring in the air, and it vanished with a flash. Frodo gave a cry, and Tom leaned forward and handed it back to him with a smile. Frodo looked at it closely and rather suspiciously, like one who has lent a trinket to a juggler. It was the same ring, or looked the same and weighed the same. That ring had always seemed to Frodo to weigh strangely heavy in the hand, but something prompted him to make sure. He was perhaps a trifle annoyed with Tom for seeming to make so light of what even Gandalf thought so perilously important. He waited for an opportunity, then the talk was going again, and Tom was telling an absurd story about badgers and their queer ways. Then he slipped the ring on. Merry turned towards him to say something and gave a start and checked an explanation. Frodo was delighted, in a way. It was his own ring, all right, for Merry was staring blankly at his chair, and obviously could not see him. He got up and crept quietly away from the fireside towards the outer door. Hey there, cried Tom, glancing towards him with a most seeing look in his shining eyes. Hey, come, Frodo, there. Where be you going, old Tom Bombadil? Not as blind as that yet. Take off your golden ring. Your hand's more fair without it. Come back, leave your game and sit down beside me. We must talk a while more and think about the morning. Tom must teach the right road and keep your feet from wandering. So Tom likes to tell Frodo and them stories about the forest, about himself, all that stuff, right? He likes to sing songs, tell Frodo story and tales and all that stuff, right? And he speaks in third person too sometimes. He says Tom must teach the right road and keep your feet from wandering, obviously. Frodo laughed, trying to feel pleased, and he's not affected by the ring. Because all these other people who had the ring, they all want it so bad, they're all possessed. Tom Bombadil just takes the ring, he puts it on, he doesn't disappear. And then when he takes the ring, he plays with it and he laughs. He's not affected by the ring, he doesn't care about the ring, obviously. Frodo laughed, trying to feel pleased, and taking off the ring, he came. Frodo laughed, trying to feel pleased, and taking off the ring, he came and sat down again. Tom now told him that he reckoned the sun would shine tomorrow, and it would be a glad morning. And setting out would be hopeful, but they would do well to start early, for weather in that country was a thing that even Tom could not be sure of for long, and it would change sometimes quicker than he could change his jacket. I am no weather master, said he, nor is aught that goes on two legs. By his advice, he decided to make nearly due north from his house, over the western and lower slopes of the downs. They might hope in that way to strike the east road in a day's journey and avoid the barrows. He told them not to be afraid, but to mind their own business. Keep to the green grass. Don't you go meddling with old stone or cold whites or prying in their houses, unless you be strong folk with hearts that never falter. Well, Tom Bombadil was wishing them the best, obviously, on their continuation journey, obviously, right? He said this more than once, and he advised them to pass barrows by the west side if they chance to stray near, obviously. Well, Tom Bombadil is even aware of the dangerous journey Frodo and them are going to encounter, obviously. Barrows by one on the west side if they chance to stray near one. Then he taught them a rhyme to sing if they should by ill luck fall into any danger or difficulty the next day. Ho, Tom Bombadil, Tom Bombadil. Remember I said Tom Bombadil, Tom Bombadil. It's really annoying, obviously. By water, wood, and hill, by the reed and willow, by fire, sun, and moon, hearken now and hear us. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us. Because Tom Bombadil likes singing, obviously. When they had sung this all together after him, he clapped them into each on the shoulder with a laugh, and taking candles, led them back to their bedroom, obviously. And now I'm on chapter 8, which is the fog on the Barrow Downs. Frodo, Sam, Pip, and Merry, they go through the Barrow Downs. They're trapped in the Barrow Downs, something like that, and I believe Tom Bombadil rescues them. And that ends what? The Tom Bombadil chapter, obviously. I'm not going to explain what I just mentioned. Pretty much, Tom Bombadil tells them stories about the forest, about himself. Frodo and them are think they're on some spell, whatever it is, and they have dinner at his house. Frodo gives Tom Bombadil the ring. Tom Bombadil's not affected by the ring. He puts the ring on, he doesn't disappear. So he has power over the ring or something like that. He doesn't care about the ring. He gets the ring, he laughs. He's not possessed by it. That pretty much sums up, and he tells him to take the path through. He wishes them the best on their journey through the Barrow Downs, and tells them to avoid certain places and that kind of stuff. And he wishes them well, and they sing a song together, and that ends what? Chapter 7, pretty much. So remaining 2 minutes I have left, I'm going to continue talking about Skysers. My Skysers company will be a top-notch company. You're looking at the best brand in the entertainment business. As all these Hollywood actors are going to get to party up my $100 million super advanced rooftop condo. Remember Tony Stark in Iron Man, how he owned a nice house, high-end nice house, like a $100 million plus house, whatever it is. Me and my wife are going to own a $100 million super advanced rooftop condo, high-tech automatic doors, high-tech elevator taking us up, high-tech garage, super advanced, you know what I'm saying, nice terrace, private IMAX theater room, indoor pool, a nice room, a super nice room, and super advanced bathroom, a nice gym, man. You know, something top notch, a nice jacuzzi room. Me and my wife are going to own a high-tech condo, and those actors are not only... You guys will see my condo in the dock, but those actors are going to get to part of my condo. They're going to get to experience my actual condo. They actually get to see it. They get to see my luxury super advanced office, experience my luxury jet, my yacht, all that stuff. They're going to be saved, obviously. They're going to get to experience all that. You guys will see it in the dock, but those actors are actually going to get to experience all that. Whereas you guys do not get to experience all that. You guys are all left behind. And Peter Jackson and Mel Gibson, if they're hired, they're also going to get to experience my jet. They're going to get to experience my jet. They're going to get to experience my $100 million condo, my luxury office, all that. Obviously. And if they're chosen, there's a good chance I'm going to hire them. I'll have to compete for the job. But somebody tells me Mel Gibson's the right man for the job. And if one of those guys are hired, they're going to be saved. And they're going to be directing my Oscar Brazilians movie. The best story ever told. and they're gonna experience success and fame with I and VJ. Hence why they're also gonna break their asses off. They're also gonna get the part out of my 100 million rooftop condo too, obviously. Right, that's how top notch of a scarce is coming. Looking at a top notch 100 million rooftop condo, we're gonna own, man. You guys see the future. You already know how top notch of a condo I'm gonna own. VJ already knows how top notch of a condo. Remember that picture remember when VJ made that Instagram video? It shows her on a rooftop. She was with that Madison chick. I don't know her, that Madison chick, right? She shows her on top of the roof. I guarantee VJ made that Instagram video because she knew in the future I'm gonna own that. Me and her are gonna own that $100 million rooftop condo, obviously. This is it for this video. Stay tuned for my next video, continuation.